So as always, just pause the video as I hover over everything I'm using on this build currently, but I'm finally showing my new turret drone build with core sets. You know, I really like the ride foam, which I made as an alternative to this build, like I mentioned in my previous videos. I made that core set build as an alternative to this one for Countdown specifically, but then it turned into its whole thing, where it's like, hey, you know, I should go survivalist tree to get even tankier, and you know, I don't need all these skill tiers for riot foam. I mean, I can manage with less and have it be more efficient and tankier that way. So, you know, you can see those previous videos because I still love that build, and it's still amazing in most content too, and very fun. Probably my favorite build. Again, I like playing Countdown, so it actually lets me still use a similar build in Countdown. But this one is unequivocally better than that one for certain scenarios, which of course is missions, definitely escalations for the lower tiers, and certain in soloing open world. Although I will say this, in Retaliation, this build is not as good, because in Retaliation specifically, you're just constantly having to be on the move so much, and you're always getting attacked from your flanks. Like, there's always an enemy spawning behind you and attacking you at the back, no matter what. There's so many, because it's open world, there's just so many angles and just wide areas that the enemies are constantly shooting everyone from, that because of that, your turret and your drone don't offer as much of a protection, you could say, because they don't really take aggression off you as consistently, because there's always someone else shooting you. And they also can, especially the turret, since you're always having to move and enemies are everywhere, the turret, it's really hard to set up the turret in consistently good spots, unlike missions. Or again, if you're solo, like as you'll see, I'm going to do a control point, but that's, when you're soloing in open world, that's much easier, actually, precisely because the enemies are concentrated on you, and then also you don't have to deal with nearly as many spawns as in Retaliations. Although we still dealt with a resource convoy and a Kitsu thing happening at the same time as the control point, and I didn't call for help because, again, I just wanted to show off this build, you know, still being good for difficult content like that, where you don't call for help and just solo a whole control point until the end, while other events are also happening during control points, which is often how they become really hard, is just how much insane events will just spawn at the same time on you. And again, this build is meant for casual solo group play, so it's like I'm not doing Memento, I'm not doing Bloodsucker, or any of that. I know those builds are better than this one for soloing specifically, for tank DPS, but I always like casual raw stat builds that also I can just take everywhere and are always consistent. They don't rely on any sort of stacking. They don't rely on any sort of kill streaks. It's just pure stats, pretty much, is always what I like doing. And also, for that very reason, we're using Pestilence, because Pestilence, Plague of the Outcast, it does not get affected by crit chance, crit damage buffs. So I realized if we're going to go pure tank turret build with like armor regen instead, Plague of the Outcast is still good because Pestilence still gets buffed and damaged by core strength, but then the Plague is also pretty much at the same strength it would be anyway, even if we had like crit damage and crit chance. So it's a nice alternative, and also for that same reason, we actually go Gunner Tree. So I wasn't considering the Investor Mask and Technician Tree for even more armor regen with the extra skill tier, but honestly, later on, especially after they made the change to prototype gear, adding more skill tiers, I realized I'd rather have Gunner and just have 6 skill tiers on my build that will change to armor later on, which will also give us better skills, because adding armor cores when we prototype our gear will increase skill efficiency, making our turrets even better, ironically, and drones. So anyway, let's just get into it. But yeah, it's like, I really definitely still love this build, though. It's very good casual. It's good for low tier escalation farming too. But one last point I want to make. It's about to go to black screen. I just had to add this at the end of the video. One last change I know I need to do in the build, when you pay attention to the pestilence I'm using, it has damage to armor, which I took because because I know damage to armor, damage to target out of cover, it still affects the plague bonus damage. Crit damage doesn't, but that does. However, I've since regretted it because it's only, of course, a minor improvement, and it only helps against the armor on pretty much elites for the most parts, but it doesn't help against all targets like robots and chunguses and certain bosses. And I realized, I should have done Rate of Fire, actually. Again, that's all of it's just a minor improvements, but Rate of Fire would build the plague stacks quicker on it, and in addition to that, it basically is just a raw DPS increase against everything. If I'm not using crit damage, crit chance. So I'm like, yeah, I'm also doing control points because I'm going to save up enough resources yet again to know I have enough to just max optimization and expertise again. And once I know I probably have enough, I'm just going to roll it a few times until I get Rate of Fire instead and max it out to where it currently is again. But yeah, like Rate of Fire, I realized is a better thing for this build for Pestilence because, again, you're using Gunner Tree, you're using LMG, obviously, and also it's just, again, it'll build the stacks quicker.